Hey guys, welcome back to No Recipe Required. I'm Dave. Today I'm going to show you how to make butternut squash agnolotti. Okay guys, so what I've done for our butternut squash agnolotti, I've taken a butternut squash, just sliced it and cut it up into these small dices, about 3/4 of an inch cube. I'm going to, I just put them on some foil on a tin here and then put salt and pepper and some olive oil on them. I'm going to bake them off in an oven for about an hour and 20 minutes or so at 350, 400 degrees. Until they're fully cooked, they get crispy caramelized edges, and then we'll be able to take them out. I'm going to use some of these in my filling for the agnolotti. The rest of it, you probably only need half of this much or so for our filling. The rest I'm going to put into a butternut squash soup, but I figure might as well do the whole thing since I've got the squash. Let me throw these in the oven. We'll check back when they're ready to come out. Okay guys, so we're going to make our butternut squash filling for our agnolotti. I've got the butternut squash here that just came out of the oven. You do want to make sure it's fully cooked through and nice and soft so that it purees up nicely. You want a nice smooth filling. I'm also going to add a little bit of goat cheese. Now I might normally use a ricotta, but I don't have ricotta, and I figured might use or might just try something a little different tonight. And then I also like to add just a little knob of butter to make it nice and rich in there. I'm going to go ahead, pulse this up in the food processor until it is nice and smooth. If it ends up being a little thick, you may need to add a little bit of olive oil to it. Or maybe even some water. But let's go ahead and give it a try with a few pulses. Okay guys, so mine is a little bit thick. I'm going to give it a little taste. It's pretty good, pretty close, but I want it to be a little bit looser. I'm going to add some salt and pepper to it. And then I'm also going to hit it with a couple tablespoons of water. And that will just help loosen up the butternut squash from the edges and enable me to get a bit of a softer, more consistent puree. Just going to give that a little stir in, then we're going to pulse for a couple more minutes. Okay, so our mixture, our puree, is now nice and smooth. Tastes good. So I'm just going to go ahead, empty it into a bowl, and then we're ready to stuff our pasta. Okay guys, so we are going to stuff our agnolotti. I've got my filling done, I've got my pasta done. Agnolotti are essentially little purses, or you can think of them as folded over ravioli, or almost half moons. I've got a little cutter here, cake cutter, that is in rounds. I like to make them, this is probably 3 or 3¼ inches or so. In diameter. If you don't have one of these, you could cut them out by hand. You could also use a glass, top of a glass to kind of press out that shape. Works as well. There's kind of two ways to do this. One is the independent, one at a time method. So you just kind of drop that on the pasta sheet, give it a little cut there, and then you've got your individual piece of pasta. Now you can go ahead and take this. Take maybe half a teaspoon to a teaspoon full of filling. You want to be careful not to overstuff it, which you can do fairly easily because you do have to fold it and seal it. The way we're going to get this to stick is take I've just got a little bit of water here, plain old ordinary water, and dip your finger, run your finger, and just moisten half of that pasta sheet, half of one side. And then that's what we fold over onto itself. And then once they meet, press them together. You want to try and come down, one, so that the filling doesn't squirt out, but two, so you get as much air out of that center as you can. And then just work it kind of around, pressing here and there. You want to squeeze it fairly tight together to make sure you get that seal. And then you've got one of your agnolottis done. I will, I'll typically just dust this in a little bit of flour, which I've got on my board as well, to keep them from sticking, and then go ahead, set it on a sheet or on a plate until you're ready to cook it. It'll only take a couple minutes. The other way to do this is kind of assembly line fashion. You can go ahead and just put a little filling down. You know, do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them at a time, and then cut them out, fold them. That goes a little bit quicker, but until you're comfortable, I might try doing one at a time. Once I get the rest of these done, we'll boil them off and then finish it with a brown butter and sage sauce. Okay, guys, time to cook our agnolottes. I've got a pot of water boiling on the stove. I'm going to add some salt to it, good healthy amount of salt, and then I'm going to drop these guys in. Fresh pasta like this really only takes a minute or so to cook, so it's not something you want to walk away from. I've also got on the stove my brown butter sauce, and that is on a low heat as well. Once we're ready to move it over, we're going to take the pasta from the water directly into that pan, and so I want that on temperature and ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and drop these guys in, and then, like all pasta, just give it a quick stir, make sure nothing's sticking. And I'm going to let those go for just a minute or so. Okay, guys, so agnolotti have been on for a couple minutes. They are ready to come off. Things are going to move a little quick here. So what I've got a strainer here. I'm going to go ahead and strain the pasta out, and then I'm going to dump that pasta into my brown butter sauce. But as I do that, I'm going to add in a little bit of garlic and a little bit of shallot. Those are going to get soft in my sauce. Just give that a little stir. I am back with my agnolotti. I'm going to add those to my sauce and get those nicely coated in that butter sauce. I'm going to add just a little bit of Parmesan cheese, about a tablespoon, and let that kind of mix together. And then we're ready to plate. It's that quick. Okay, guys, like I said, we are ready to plate. I'm going to go ahead and pull a few of these guys right out of the pan. Lay them down and make sure we get a good amount of that butter sauce down as well. And then we're going to go ahead, we'll garnish it with just a little bit of chive sprinkled on top. A little green on the plate is always nice. And then I've also got some toasted almonds, which will give a little bit of crunch to the dish. Go ahead and wipe that plate off, make it nice and pretty. There you go. Little butternut squash agnolotti in a brown butter sauce. I'll see you next time on No Recipe Required.